The human psyche is infinitely complex, which means new research comes out every day that helps illuminate why we're the way we are. Here are the 25 mind-blowing psychology facts explain everything. Before getting into the video, please consider subscribing to our channel. We make videos on various topics, and we publish one video per day. So don't forget to subscribe, likes and press the bell icon, so you get notified when we publish a new video. 1. If we have a plan B, our plan A is less likely to work. Every now and then, it hurts to be prepared. In a series of experiments from the University of Pennsylvania, researchers found that when volunteers thought about a backup plan before starting a task, they did worse than those who hadn't thought about a plan B. What's more, when they realized they had options, their motivation for succeeding the first time around dropped. The researchers stress that thinking ahead is a good idea, but you might be more successful if you keep those plans vague. 2. Fear can feel good, if we're not really in danger. Not everyone loves scary movies, but for the people who do, there are a few theories as to why, the main one coming down to hormones. When you're watching a scary movie or walking through a haunted house, you get all the adrenaline, endorphins, and dopamine from a fight or flight response. Still, no matter how scared you feel, your brain recognizes that you're not really in danger, so you get that natural high without the risk. 3. Catching a yawn could help us bond. Why do you yawn when someone else does, even if you aren't tired? There are a few theories about why yawning is contagious, but one of the leading ones is that it shows empathy. People who are less likely to show compassion, such as toddlers who haven't learned it yet or young people with autism, are also less likely to yawn in reaction to someone else's. 4. We care more about a single person than about massive tragedies. In another University of Pennsylvania study, one group learned about a little girl who was starving to death, another learned about millions dying of hunger, and a third learned about both situations. People donated more than twice as much money when hearing about the little girl than when hearing the statistics, and even the group who'd heard her story in the context of the bigger tragedy donated less. Psychologists think that we're wired to help the person in front of us, but when the problem feels too big, we figure our little part isn't doing much. 5. Beginnings and ends are easier to remember than middles. When people are asked to recall items from a list, they're most likely to think of things from the very end, or from the very beginning, found one study published in Frontiers of Human Neuroscience. The middle gets muddled, which could also play into why you remember your boss wrapping up her presentation, but not so much about the middle. 6. It takes 5 positive things to outweigh a single negative thing. Our brains have something called a negativity bias that makes us remember bad news more than good, which is why you quickly forget that your coworker complimented your presentation but keep dwelling on the fact that a kid at the bus stop insulted your shoes. To feel balanced, we need at least a 5-to-1 ration of good to bad in our lives. 7. Food tastes better when someone else makes it. Ever wonder why that sandwich from the takeout place down the street tastes better than the ones you make at home, even if you use the same ingredients? One study published in the journal Science found that when you make yourself a meal, you're around it so long that it feels less exciting by the time you actually dig in, and that, subsequently, decreases your enjoyment. 8. Rather know something bad is coming than not know what to expect. Researchers who published their work in the journal Nature have found that it's less stressful to know something negative is about to happen, e.g., there's no chance we'll get to a meeting on time, than when we don't know how things will work out, e.g., we might be on time after all. That's because the part of our brain that predicts consequences, whether good or bad, is most active when it doesn't know what to expect. If stepping on the gas will help us beat traffic, we'll go through that stress instead of just accepting that we'll have to come up with a decent excuse when, not if we're late. 9. We always try to return a favor. It's not just good manners, the rule of reciprocity suggests that we're programmed to want to help someone who's helped us. It probably developed because, to keep society working smoothly, people need to help each other out. Stores, and some frenemies, like to use this against you, offering freebies in hopes that you'll spend some cash. 10. When one rule seems too strict, we want to break more. Psychologists have studied a phenomenon called reactance. When people perceive certain freedoms being taken away, they not only break that rule, but they break even more than they otherwise would have in an effort to regain their freedom. This could be one of the best psychology facts to explain why a teenager who can't use his phone in class will chew gum while stealthily sending a text. 11. There's a reason we want to squeeze cute things. "It's so cute, I just was to smoosh it until it pops." That's called cuteness aggression, and people who feel it don't really want to crush that adorable puppy. Research published in Frontiers in Behavioral Neuroscience found that when we're feeling overwhelmed by positive emotions, like we do when looking at an impossibly cute baby animal, a little bit of aggression helps us balance out that high. 12. Our brains try to make boring speeches more interesting. University of Glasgow researchers found that in the same way that we hear voices in our heads when we read aloud, our brains also talk over boring speeches. If someone is speaking monotonously, we'll subconsciously make it more vivid in our heads. 13. Some people enjoy seeing anger in others. In one University of Michigan study, people with high testosterone remembered information better when it was paired with an angry face than a neutral one or no face, indicating they found the angry glare rewarding. The researchers said it could mean that certain people enjoy making someone else glare at them, as long as the flash of anger doesn't last long enough to be a threat, which could be why that guy in the office won't let go of that stupid joke at your expense. 14. We automatically second-guess ourselves when other people disagree. In a famous 1950s experiment, college students were asked to point out which of 3 lines was the same length as a fourth. When they heard others, who were in on the experiment, choose an answer that was clearly wrong, the participants followed their lead and gave that same wrong answer. 15. We aren't as good at multitasking as we think we are. Research published in the Journal of Experimental Psychology shows that even when you think you're doing 2 things at once, what you're actually doing is switching quickly between the 2 tasks, you're still focusing on one at a time. No wonder it's so hard to listen to your partner while scrolling through Instagram. 16. We're convinced that the future is bright. Doesn't matter if you like where you're at right now or not, most of us have an optimism bias that convinces us the future will be better than the present, according to research in Current Biology. We assume we'll rise up in our careers, never get divorced, raise little angels of children, and live to a ripe old age. Those might not all be realistic for everyone, but there's no harm in dreaming. 17. We unintentionally believe what we want to believe. Humans are victim to something called confirmation bias, the tendency to interpret facts in a way that confirms what we already believe. So no matter how many facts you throw at your uncle trying to sway his political opinions, there's a good chance he isn't going to budge. It's one of the psychology facts you'll just have to accept that you can't change. 18. Our brains want us to be lazy. Evolutionarily speaking, conserving energy is a good thing. When food was scarce, our ancestors still had to be ready for anything. Unfortunately for anyone watching their weight, that still holds true today. A small study published in Current Biology found that when walking on a treadmill, volunteers would automatically adjust their gait to burn fewer calories. 19. Being lonely is bad for our health. Researchers found that fewer friends a person has, the higher levels of the blood-clotting protein fibrinogen. The effect was so strong that having 15 friends instead of 25 was just as bad as smoking. 20. You're programmed to love the music you listened to in high school the most. The music we like gives us a hit of dopamine and other feel-good chemicals, and that's even stronger when we're young because our brains are developing. From around age 12 to 22, everything feels more important, so we tend to emphasize those years the most and hang on to those musical memories. 21. Memories are more like pieced-together pictures than accurate snapshots. Even people with the best memories in the world can have false memories. The brain generally remembers the gist of what happens, then fills in the rest, sometimes inaccurately, which explains why you insist your wife was with you at a party 6 years ago, even though she's adamant she wasn't. 22. When you feel like you're low on something, like money, you obsess over it. Psychologists have found that the brain is sensitive to scarcity, the feeling that you're missing something you need. When farmers have a good cash flow, for instance, they tend to be better planners than when they're tight for money, one study found. When you're feeling cash-strapped, you might need more reminders to pay bills or do chores because your mind is too busy to remember. 23. We keep believing things, even when we know they're wrong. Researchers in one science study fed volunteers false information, then a week later revealed that the facts weren't real. Even though the volunteers knew the truth now, fMRI scans showed that they still believed the misinformation about half the time. It's one of the psychology facts to know that could make you smarter. 24. We look for human faces, even in inanimate objects. Most of us haven't seen Jesus in a piece of toast, but we've all noticed cartoonish faces seemingly staring back at us from inanimate objects. That's called pareidolia, and scientists think it comes from the fact that recognizing faces is so important to social life that our brains would rather find one where there isn't one than miss a real-life face. 25. To our ancestors, sugar and fat were good things. Why, oh why, does steak have to taste better than vegetables? Well, because that's how we were primed for millions of years. For our ancestors, getting a quick hit of energy from sugar and then storing it as fat, or eating plenty of fat to keep our bodies and brains fueled meant more energy in the long run. But now that sugary, fatty foods are easy, a little too easy, to eat and overeat, our bodies are still primed to store that fat, even though we don't need it.